Good morning, everyone. Your Excellencies, secretaries, ministers, ambassadors, a whole room full of distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Admiral, I'd like to build upon your excellent remarks, which I completely agree with. And I wanted to say how I'm honored to be here on behalf of the United States Navy and U.S. Pacific Command Commander, Admiral Harry Harris. This is a very important forum and venue for an exchange of important ideas about our future. And I'm honored to be here to be able to talk. Now, I have to recognize the United States' rather recent arrival to a place where over a millennia has had mariners plying the waters of the Indian Ocean, seeking commerce, and feeding their people, and protecting and advancing their nation's interests. And in the past 100 years, we've all seen a massive change from a colonial, empirical, and feudal system to a young but still stable rules-based order that respects the rights of all nations. And indeed, as Admiral Singh pointed out, we are standing in a country today with a respected voice far beyond their size, that in part has been enabled by the system that we are talking about, a system that respects right more than might. And at the same time, global prosperity has grown at an unprecedented rate. But the system also feels the impact of growing pressures. In our lifetimes, the population of our planet has more than doubled. Energy consumption has increased over 4 times. And we're just barely beginning to understand the true impacts of climate change. And there are still many people who feel either threatened or disenfranchised with the system that is in place in the world today, and they seek to undermine it. So the maritime security landscape has become more complex with increased competition for everything from food to hydrocarbons, other natural resources, and security. And there are dangers in this that we cannot underestimate. Now, people have been thinking about global complexity for more than 100 years. Take, for example, the early 20th century American playwright, George Bernard Shaw. Now, after World War I in 1918, Shaw believed that no human could live long enough to learn enough to govern effectively. And so that he came to believe that you'd have to live about 300 years in order to know enough to deal with the complexity of the world. Now, as much as I enjoy yoga, I don't think I'm going to make it to 300 years. But if we think about the complexity that has changed our world in the last 100 years since then, where do we go? Where do we go from here? And as so many have already made clear, this Indian Ocean region, in many ways, is the crossroads of the inflection point that we are standing on in our history. As one example, there are over 17 million ocean-going containers that have been talked about a couple different times today, 17 million. And at any given time, there are several 100,000 of those containers at sea right now, making their way around the world. And so the significance of the Indian Ocean will continue to grow. There's no doubt about that. And along with this shift, we also have the increasing challenges of food and energy security and the ever-present dangers of terrorism and piracy and other things that have been mentioned already. So mutual respect and cooperation is in all of our shared interests. But we do have reason for optimism. Despite the challenges of a globally pressurized system, the social and economic rise of the region has been unparalleled in the last 70 years, as I stated earlier. And it's anchored by an increasingly inclusive, transparent security architecture where all nations, large and small, have a voice. They all deserve a voice. So we in the United States are very excited about initiatives that enhance and increase collaboration, cooperation, bilateral, multilateral approaches to security especially among the navies. And this is why the United States Navy continues dedicating considerable time, resources, and energy to promote bilateral and multilateral security cooperation. As examples, this year, the Rim of the Pacific exercise concluded with over 25 navies participating. The Southeast Asia Cooperation and Training Exchange just finished last week. We had 9 nations, including Bangladesh for the first time, working collaboratively on information sharing to combat piracy and assist in search and rescue operations. Last October, the USS Theodore Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group participated in Exercise Malabar in India, and for the first time, India graciously invited the participation of the Japanese Navy there as well. And we had a port visit to Chennai by USS Fort Worth, which was forward deployed here to Singapore. In July, the USS New Orleans, along with the 13th Marine Expeditionary Unit, visited Colombo in Sri Lanka. And we have much more to look forward to with those nations and many others in the region. And the future cooperation is promising, and we look forward to our partnership with the nations in the region. We value these relationships, and there are 21 nations in this room represented. And we have relationships with all of them that are important. So why do naval cooperation exercises matter in the context of global security? Because naval cooperation builds more than capability between navies. It also grows relationships that become friendships, that enable partnerships to work toward common interests. The competition for resources looking forward and the ever-present threats to the maritime domain will continue testing our ability to work together, and our collective future and our livelihoods depend upon the seas in this globalized world. We are all affected by what happens on the seas. And so we all recognize the need to come together and meet the challenges of our time and shape a more safe, prosperous future. And trust and respect in the peaceful resolution of our differences will ensure that we get to that safer future with meaningful progress. So indeed, there is much more work to be done, and the United States looks forward to doing our part to do the work with our friends and our partners across the Indian Ocean region. Thank you.